Hi, everyone. Welcome back to Taking the Lead, where we talk with PR and communications experts about all things leadership, about inspiration, about motivation, about having followership. And I am so excited to introduce to you the youngest leader we've ever featured on Taking the Lead. And that's part of our story today. So many of you know her. She's the amazing Sabrina Browne. Let me tell you a little bit about her. In only 5 years, she went from AE to VP Corporate Affairs at BCW. She's named a top 100 women leaders of New Jersey, Business Insider's 20 rising stars in PR, Crane's notable in marketing PR, and there's even more. She's on the board of PRSA New York as the VP of Marketing and doing an amazing job there. She was the moderator of the Black PR History of the Month celebration for the Museum of PR event. And I think I sent her a LinkedIn message saying, why don't you have your own TV show? She's the co chair of the Black Voices Affinity Group of PRSA National. But there's more. She was, I'll give you a little background, a junior AE at Hunter PR. Many of you know Grace Leong, their CEO, who's been a guest here on Taking the Lead. And Grace was just named to PR Week's Women of Distinction. And of course, Hunter was founded by one of my first bosses and a real PR agency glass ceiling breaker, Barbara Hunter. And she was just named, not Barbara Hunter, but Sabrina Browne, to PR Week's Women to Watch. In my view, Sabrina is living proof of something I've said for years in my leadership training, that leadership isn't about age or title or even experience. It's about leadership energy. It's having and appropriately using influence, resilience, and empathy. You all can tell I am thrilled to welcome to Taking the Lead Sabrina Browne.
Wow, Ken, just thank you so much for that introduction. I am honored just to reflect on where I've been in my career journey and also where I am today. So it's a privilege to be here with you and to stand on the shoulders of the other fantastic women before me, Grace, Barbara, my mentor, Patrice Tanaka. Thank you so much for having me today.
And yeah, shout out to Patrice. You're here because of Patrice. Okay, we're going to dig right in. How'd you do it? How have you had this skyrocketing career?
Yeah, I mean, it's crazy to think about all that I've accomplished within the last decade that I've been working in the public relations industry. And I really feel to celebrate where I am today, I must reflect on where I've been. When I started this journey a decade ago, I was just graduated from Seton Hall University in the public relations program. And I emphasize that because when I started at Seton Hall, I was in the business program. Both of my parents, Belgian and Liberian immigrants, they are Wall Street executives working at Chase and the New York Stock Exchange. And they thought that I was going to follow their route and go to a big bank. After one business course at Seton Hall, I was like, oh, I am not interested. This is not for me. I mean, I think it was
No.
quantitative methods of business. And I was like, ooh. So I took a career assessment exam at the university's Career Center, and three areas came up: marketing, advertising, and public relations. And I was like, the first two I've heard of, I don't know what public relations is. Little did I know, I would soon discover what PR was and that this would be the industry for me. I met the then chair of public relations, Dr. Kathleen Rennie. She talked to me about PR, told me about the industry, what I could do, the change I could create, the impact that I could make. And I knew that this is what I wanted to do for myself, but also where my passions align. You know this about me already, Ken, but for the audience tuning in, I'm a storyteller, I'm a creative. I love to see things come to life. And what better industry to do that than PR? So after that journey, I successfully earned my first role at Hunter PR. It was a great experience working on their consumer team. Then I started consulting with an organization called Emerge New Jersey, really helping to build the bench in the Garden State, as we like to say, and help more women get into elected office. And I then took that experience with consulting paired with my consumer background, and I scored my position at BCW Global, which formerly Burson Marsteller. So it's been a journey, but I look at those three C's of consulting, consumer, and culture as what has guided me here today. I'm able to come to BCW with the tenacity and leadership to manage a team by myself or complete the work independently. And I think that that's so important, especially for someone like me who, as you said, I've shot up the ladder pretty fast, but there's been some strategic steps and measures that I've taken every step of the way.
Good. Let's do a little shout out to Kathy Rennie. I served on the PRSA New Jersey board
Woo!
with her.
Yes.
So, hey,
Wow.
Kathy, I hope you're sharing this anyway. So, when did you have that moment that many of us have had where you say, yeah, I've gone from, learner to practitioner to manager. Now, no, this isn't about PR. This is about leading and inspiring. Like, where did that all kind of come together for you?
Yeah, that culmination point, I'd say, was spring 2019 when BCW leadership told me I was going to become a North American ERG leader. A bit of imposter syndrome set in. I was like, huh? Like me, an employee resource group lead? What? I'm too young. I'm not capable. But they saw so much potential in me, not just from my client experience, but the community of young Black and BIPOC talent that I had been mentoring over the last few years, sponsoring, advocating, and taking all of that into reflection of me to take on this role. And I remember when I held my first AIR meeting, so African American Employee Resource Group, the amount of people in that room, I was completely shocked. I was like, wait, all these people are here to hear from me. And in that moment, I realized I didn't just have influence, but I had importance. And that's something that has continued to guide me throughout my career. What am I doing that's not only going to change the workplace, the culture, but how can I make an important impact on someone's experience? Whether that's advocating for them, helping them get a promotion, a bonus or a spot raise, recommending them for that big new business pitch. I see my leadership role through the lens of advocacy, through the lens of change, but also through the lens of importance. I think for many of us, we focus on influence, right? That's the first piece. Getting people to follow you, like your stuff, post, comment, retweet. Once you've nailed the influence, why are you important as a leader? I look at Sabrina Browne at BCW. I'm a client leader, I'm an ERG leader, but I'm also bringing importance and relevancy to our culture and to the workplace at large. And I think that for me was that aha moment of
Mhm.
recognizing my own truth to power as a young leader in the PR industry.
Great. So, related to that, what's your best counsel? Like three Sabrina points for anyone who wants to make the jump. And maybe as not everyone's going to do it as quickly as you, but for those who want to light the fire and accelerate, what are some things they can do?
Number one, be strategic about your career. I
Mm.
cannot emphasize this enough. Be very strategic about how you approach your work and your client deliverables. I'm a firm believer of working smarter, not harder, to really ensure you're maximizing each day versus feeling burnt out and exhausted. And a layer into this is to also be strategic about where you invest your time. One of the mistakes I made in my 20s was being everywhere for everyone. I did not know how to say no. I
Mm.
just kept showing up at all these events. Now that I've learned towards the latter half of my 20s, you don't need to be in every room and at every event. So be strategic with your career is number one. Number two, and it goes without question, build your executive profile in and outside of the industry. I love public relations, hence this big smile today. But I also love
And it's contagious. We're all smiling. It's,
Thank
who
you.
can resist you?
Oh yes, I love PR. I was born to do this, but there's also other things that I'm passionate about. Women and girls advocacy, period poverty. So joining boards that aligned with that made a huge impact in my career projection as well as acceleration. So as you already called out, I sit on the board for PRSA New York as well as PRSA National. But then I also have the pleasure of sitting on the leadership advisory board for Girl Scouts of Greater New York and working closely with Patrice Tanaka, other fearless leaders who are advocating for change at the city and grassroots level. Then I think about my other big passion, and it's the Wall Street in me, but financial literacy is super important. I grew up with two Wall Street parents, so what can you expect? I sit on the board for Pace Lumen's Economic Advisory Board, and it's an honor I hold near and dear to think about how we're advancing that in the financial sector. So building your executive presence through advisory boards has been a winning part of my career strategy, and I'm giving that tip to everyone today. And the last thing, which is really, really important, is to show up as your authentic self. And I get that that's easier said than done, Ken, but it makes a huge difference. Here I am with my nails, my blouse, my makeup, my bright Fenty lips. This is the Sabrina Browne brand. And I wish I could have done this when I was younger. I regret spending so much of my early 20s rejecting everything that made me special. And I don't want that for anyone else. I don't want anyone else to reject what makes them special. So now I know who I am when I walk in the room, and my clients, my teams know that as well. I am unapologetically fierce and fabulous. So being who you are will always be enough.
Now, this is kind of frightening to me and maybe our viewers, but I've noticed the lip color and I thought I want to ask her about that because it really is part of your brand and it's fierce and fabulous. You said it so well. It's so funny that you bring that up. I'm still working on mine. I haven't figured it out. Okay.
Recommendations, let me know.
I hate to change the mood, but I'm going to.
Okay.
I just recently learned that you experienced a brain aneurysm, which of course could be fatal, and you've bounced back and then some. What did you learn about yourself as a leader from this experience?
Yeah, so I would say that experience was defining for me, my family, and my outlook on life. The greatest takeaway I learned is the power of perseverance. From doctors telling my parents that I may have a speech impediment, I may have mobile complications, I may not be able to write my own name again, to participating in rehab, to going to therapy, really making sure that I could get myself back up to speed through grace, through faith, through the support of my parents. All of that showed me the power of perseverance. When I look at obstacles that I face in the workplace now, I say to myself, girl, you survived an aneurysm. You can do this. You can handle this pitch. You can talk to this reporter. You can sit down with this client. And maybe that's a bit morbid, but it keeps me grounded. Dr. Kathy Rennie would always say to me when I was an undergraduate, Sabrina, it's PR, not ER. And surviving that aneurysm really brought that saying to life.
Yeah,
PR, it's a high stress job. And some days I'm like, oh, girl. But I think back and I say to myself, you've been through worse. You're going to get through this too. And you're going to do it triumphantly. You're going to do it gracefully. And you're going to take your team along. So the power of perseverance, I think that's the most important thing that overcoming and surviving my aneurysm has taught me. And of course, faith, as you know, I'm really big on prayer meditation. So those have been guideposts in my career.
no, thank you for that inspiration. We're glad you're here. That's for sure.
Thank
So,
you.
so speaking of the word, you mentioned the word inspiration. Who are your key leadership inspirations, and like what are the major things you've learned from them?
Oh gosh, well, I don't want to run up the time, but I
but
I have five leaders. Ooh, that sounds like a lot, but truly, I had to narrow this down.
wow. Well, you're very fortunate then, aren't you?
I have five leaders who have been instrumental, and I will start with the first one, Patrice Tanaka. So as you know, she's
Mutual friend,
our
mutual inspiration.
I mean, just such an incredible, formidable leader. Everything that she's done for me, most importantly, helping me discover my purpose. When I met Patrice a few years ago, she had said to me so sharply that she could see my client expertise and she could see my career trajectory. But what was my purpose? And I was
Mm.
like, PR, I love PR. And she was like, okay, but what do you do outside of work? And I was like, what am I doing outside of work? I had to really sit with myself
Yeah.
and think about that, and going through her exercise and the program that she does and everything that she leads at Joyful Planet, I was able to figure out, well, what is my purpose? To empower my community, my clients, and serve others, to bring that to life through advocacy and to empower women and girls. And for me, it was a full 360 moment kind of, can I bring this to work at BCW? Can I bring this to work in my community? What does that look like? And not only discovering my purpose, but now living my purpose. So the power of purpose is the greatest lesson I've learned from Patrice Tanaka.
And just to interject, I think when people are so focused on their career and only their career, they're really at a loss if they don't take some kind of journey. But when you take that journey and
Yes.
figure out your purpose and your authentic you, you're better at PR. You're better with your clients. You're better with your
Extremely.
teams. It builds your career and then some.
It definitely does. And I feel like that's a good segue into the next person who is very important to me and plays an integral role, Teresa Henderson here at BCW. She has really enforced the power of executive sponsorship. Me being a Black woman, Teresa being a white woman, the way that she has invested in my career has served as my executive sponsor, making sure that I'm on the right pitches, on the right teams, counseling the right clients. Having her in my corner has been transformative, but also just the lessons and the teachings that she's provided to me. I think what I failed to realize early in my career was that I thought anyone who invested in me had to look like me. They also had to be a Black woman because, well, if they're not a Black woman, they're not going to understand me. But through this decade and through this journey, I've realized that sponsorship and allyship shows up in different forms, and to welcome that and embrace that. So, to Teresa, if you're watching, I'm very thankful for you. The
Okay.
third person I'd say is definitely Thomas Bunn. He's over at Zeno Group, and he's really helped me learn the role of strategy and communications. I think when I was coming up in PR, I was so focused on media and impressions. But my mentorship sessions with Thomas these last 2 years have been transformative. Thinking about strategy from the start, how that's going to inform our campaigns, inform our tactics. That has been a true, true blessing for me, and it's clearly shown well in my client work. So thank you, Thomas.
Great.
Last two, rounding us out. I know I said I had five.
Good.
Without question, Chris Foster, who's over at Omnicom.
Oh, sure.
Chris has been transformative since I was legacy person, so person Marsteller, now BCW, and just everything I've learned from Chris. The most important lesson is that power of authenticity. Seeing how he works the room, sometimes being the only one in the room, has given me confidence to do the same. I've learned from Chris to never lose sight of who I am and where I'm going. And lastly, Dr. Kathleen Rennie on the importance of betting on myself and taking risk. She, at the time when I first started in PR, was the chair of public relations at Seton Hall. She was an early believer in my career, Ken, the first believer when my parents and my siblings told me I was crazy, that if I wasn't working on Wall Street, I would not make it. Dr. Rennie saw me and believed in me.
Mhm.
So from that experience, I've learned to take the risk. And I would say the return on investment has been significant because here I am talking with you today. So
You've made it. You're on taking the lead. Look at that. I'd like to think that. Okay. This has been great. Last question.
yes.
You're clearly playing an active role in bringing more BPOC women into our industry. And we hope we have more than a few agency CEOs and senior corporate communications folks watching us right now. What's your message to them about not the talk, but the actions they must take now to drive better DE&I in their organizations?
Number one message is to invest in your Black and BIPOC talent. So, what does that investment look like? Align what you're saying with what you're doing, promoting your talent, creating development programs for your talent, offering them bonuses, spot raises. That investment really comes to life through your commitment to in their careers, their growth, but also their financial stability. You can't tell me that you believe in DEI and you want to invest in talent, but then your numbers are saying otherwise. You can't tell me that you're standing with Black Lives Matter and Stop Asian Hate, but your employee workplace is showing otherwise. So aligning the say and what you do is critical for 2022. More than ever, we're seeing talent more outspoken, whether that's social media, whether that's Instagram, LinkedIn, TikTok. A lot of employees have their own websites now. That's an opportunity for leadership to say to themselves, with today's most outspoken workplace, how can I make sure that the messages that they're amplifying ties back to what we're doing as an organization? I think investment is the missing piece. It's something that a lot of agencies tend to overlook, where it's, well, Ken, we have this person in leadership, or we have this person as an ERG leader, but that's not enough. Top down, bottom up, that investment in BPOC
Mm.
talent should be crystal clear.
Yeah, I love what you said about really taking action. It's reminds me of the quote, "What you do speaks so loudly, I can't hear what you say."
Amen.
What the leader does, that's and the leadership team and the whole organization it is all about action. So really good point.
100%.
So you're getting me to think that these should be hour-long segments because I've got so many other questions I want to ask you. But for today, we're just going to wrap by thanking you so much, Sabrina, for your insights, your wisdom, really your inspiration. I feel inspired, and I know everyone watching this feels inspired too. So just thank you so much for sharing all of that with us. And I, for one, am so excited about where we're going to see you in your career in the future. I just know it's going to be absolutely amazing. So thank you again. And everyone, until next time, just keep on taking the lead.